just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you are and talk about your dog life journey.
Yeah, okay. Look, I haven't really prepared much, but I can give you a little bit of I suppose, some sort of thumbnail sketch on myself. My name's Krstic. I live in Melbourne, in the state of Victoria, in Australia, and I'm a professional hunter, and that's pretty well what got me involved with Jagdterrier, or German hunting terriers. I suppose a couple of decades ago now, but you can tell by my surname that I'm of Serbian background, and I was fortunate enough to make contact with some hunters in Serbia, as I do with other hunters, in other places of the world, including the US. And we were discussing dogs in general, in particular Deutsch Drahthaars and German Whitehead Pointers, etc. And the guys kept making reference to these little terriers, these Jagdterriers, which, pardon me, aroused my interest. And eventually I wound up going to Serbia to see these dogs and meet the guys that had them. And it was a definite eye-opener, I've got to say. And as a result of all of that, I wound up importing a number of dogs from Europe here to Australia, and pretty well establishing the breed in this part of Australia.
Wow.
We use the dogs through my work extensively as hunting dogs, or sometimes they're referred to as conservation dogs, and where we hunt introduced vertebrate predators like foxes, which are introduced into Australia, feral cats, and various other animals that are a problem here. And the Jagdterriers, due to their extremely high prey drive and other good features, fit the bill very well for that sort of work. So they started life off as working dogs here for us, but I use them for recreational hunting as well. And we hunt sambar deer here with them, probably similar to how many people in the US would use hounds. Down in the southern part of the US, to use hounds to hunt whitetail and black bear and cougar. We use terriers here for that. We also have hounds for the same purpose, but the terriers are very popular amongst hunters here as well. So that, in a nutshell, I use the dogs both professionally and recreationally, as working dogs and as hunting companions. I've been very fortunate to make some very good friends in the US who also have some outstanding Jagdterriers, or German hunting terriers, and we've got a mutual arrangement where we exchange bloodlines and pedigrees, etc., to improve the breed both in the US and in this part of the world. Well, from Australia to the US, it's not a major issue. We don't have diseases such as rabies here, or leishmania and all those other sorts of exotic diseases that pose an issue for quarantine purposes, as they do here in Australia. So it's not difficult to transport a dog, or paperwork-wise, of course. Mm-hmm. It's not difficult to transport a dog or frozen semen to the US. Mm-hmm. The other way around, however, is significantly more complicated, and we need to go through a 6-month process in order to ensure that we don't bring in pathogens such as rabies and other similar things into Australia. Mm-hmm. Which is we're just a big island here, and at this stage we're sort of we haven't had any issues with those exotic diseases. And if we did get them here, it would destroy our agriculture. Jagdterriers aren't the only breed of dogs I have. I have a number of breeds. We have Deutsch Drahthaars, which are I've got to be careful what I say here. There's a lot of political issues that arise from Deutsch Drahthaar. They're also known as German Wirehairs or German Wire-haired Pointers. The major difference is the ones that are referred to as Deutsch Drahthaars are the ones that are registered in Berlin under the Verein Deutsch Drahthaar organisation. They're a versatile hunting dog that are very, very popular in the US and Europe, and they're becoming more and more popular here in Australia. They're very, very, very good dogs for what we do, but they don't have it all. They're a versatile hunting dog, and there's other dogs that we need to do other work with. So that's why we also have hounds, and the hounds I refer to dogs you'd be familiar with, I suppose, is the number of coon hounds that you have over in the US. Blue ticks, English, plots, walkers, and all those other red bones, and all those other fantastic dogs. And we have a few of those here as well. So it's a bit of a menagerie of dogs that we have here, but they've all got their little jobs that they need to do, and we're lucky enough to have enough room to keep them here and breed some good working examples of these dogs. Jagdterriers, the Germans, with all due respect to the Germans, they're really, really good at perfecting things. They make outstanding cars, outstanding weapon systems, and they breed outstanding dogs. So they're perfectionists. When they decided to breed a small versatile hunting terrier in Germany back in the early 1900s, their goal was to breed a small versatile dog that they could use for pretty well everything, but it had to be German. So the first thing they did is they went over to England and got some fox terriers and various other breeds of terriers, and then refined the breeding. This is a very condensed version of what happened.
Right. But
they refined the breeding down to a number of individuals, which featured the black and tan colour, but with a very, very high drive, and it possessed all of the relevant qualities that the Germans were looking for. And over several decades, they came up with the Jagdterrier, or Jade, the Jagdterrier is referred to in Australia, and that was their versatile hunting terrier. They set up a testing system where these dogs were tested, and only the dogs that qualified in all of the tests, all the relevant tests, were allowed to be bred from, and they culled very heavily, so anything that didn't make the grade was culled. So the breed basically made up of a number of English type terriers and some Irish bred terriers as well, and then they condensed it down to what we see today, and they breed true to type here and in Europe, and obviously in the US as well. But they do have their little idiosyncrasies as well. You've got various different body shapes, coats, things like that. But they need to comply with the standard. Those that comply with the standard are used to breed with. Those that don't obviously aren't. So you can look at 10 different Jagdterriers from different breeders or different parts of the world, and they all look like different dogs, but they all comply with the standard. They've got to comply with the standard.
And could you talk about that standard?
Well, I suppose I could, but you need to understand that my interest in these dogs isn't so much for the showing of the dogs or their appearance per se. It's pretty well wholly and solely for performance. and that these dogs, even though they all comply with the standard and fit in with the criteria that is set down by the standard, and yet the standard's easy to find. It's the American Kennel Council has it, the FCI has it, obviously, and it basically goes through each, as with any other breed. There's standard colourings, there's standard heights, shapes, features that they're looking for. Much of that, as we all know, is open to interpretation. But one thing that's not open to interpretation is the dog's ability to do what it's bred to do. And I've been, I suppose, struck off a lot of Christmas card lists here in Australia for being critical of dogs that can't do what they're supposed to be able to do. And I don't make any excuses for that. If you've got a terrier, it's got to think and act like a terrier. If it doesn't do that, well, it's not really a terrier, is it?
No.
It may have the outside appearance of being one, but it's got to be able to cut the mustard in the field, and that's pretty well what it's all about. The good thing about Jagdterriers is they've got all of that, plus they've got an exceptionally good nose. They're really, really good in water as well, and they're a pretty good all-round dog. They're a good dog to keep in the house, and have as a pet as well. But they, first and foremost, are a hunting dog.
Right.
And there's a lot of politics tied up around Jagdterriers, etc. With what's happening in Europe, and I suppose in the US now, with all this animal rights stuff going on. Many of the dogs can't be tested to the standards that are set down under the German Breed Club, where the dogs need to be exposed to wild game and what they call sharp game. That can't happen in most countries. The Eastern Europeans seem to be, what's a diplomatic line of saying, is less concerned about the proprieties, I suppose, and they still test these dogs for the things that they're supposed to be able to do. So if the dog doesn't tick all the boxes, they've got no time for them. Hence, only the best dogs are used for breeding. So you've got dogs that come from places like Serbia, from the Ukraine, and various other Eastern Bloc countries that are from the real McCoy. These are the real thing. They're not third and fourth generations of dogs that have never really been tested, and that's usually reflected in how they behave in the field as well. Well, look, it's not so much the look. The dogs have to be. They've got to be physically as good as they can possibly be. So you don't want a dog that's going to fall apart after being in the field for a couple of hours.
Right.
You need a dog that can hack it out there in the field, and to do that, it needs to be set up properly. Its feet need to be good. Its general conformation needs to be good. They need to be well muscled, not over muscled. They need to be fit, flexible, strong, and athletic. They need to have all the standard good features: nice straight bone, good muscle tone, good teeth, good eyes. All of those things that we look for when we breed dogs for performance. And to use pit bulls as an example, they're probably a classic situation. Racing greyhounds, whippets, hounds, they're all dogs that are bred with their conformation set down to ensure that they can physically do what they need to do to perform their role out in the field. Look, as far as I'm concerned, and look, I'm not I don't breed dogs for the market, I suppose, or for the trendy pet market. But my goal is to breed the best possible performance dogs I can breed, to be able to do what it is that they're supposed to be able to do, to conform with what I suppose their originators intended. If the dogs can't do that, I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
And And if my breeding program is open to the interpretation of show judges who have never done anything with these dogs in the field, I'm concerned that these dogs need not only to be a thing which is beautiful to look at, but they need to be functional. Mm-hmm. No different to your motor car, you know, or your vehicle. You know, if you have a car, it's got to look nice, but it's also got to be able to do those things that the cars are supposed to do.
Right.
Or a rifle, or anything else like that. You know, they've got to be aesthetically pleasing to look at. They've got to have good balance. They've got to be well designed, and they've got to be able to perform a function. If you can't do one of those things, you need to revisit your breeding program.
Can you talk about like the what sets the Jagdterrier apart from other terriers its size?
Look, the Jagdterriers are really they're a good old-fashioned terrier, good old-fashioned hunting dog with a very, very high prey drive. They're somewhere between the size of a fox terrier and a Jack Russell terrier in size. An adult male would go up to around 20 pounds in US speak. Mm-hmm. In Australian speak, it's about 10 kilos, maybe a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And a female's probably 10 or 15% less than the males. As I said, they're extremely versatile. They're very, very smart dogs. And they're also, at the risk of sounding, I suppose, they're also game. And the word game in the dog world opens up a can of worms. But
right.
They are, most people will live their whole life and they'll never see a game dog. Mm-hmm. They'll probably never get the opportunity to see a game dog. But Yark Terriers and terriers of that type do have that very, very deep gameness that is rarely seen, and it's probably good that most people don't see what real gameness is. But it's something that's highly prized amongst various terrier people. Mm-hmm. And your general garden variety pet owner it doesn't really matter if Fido is not game, as long as he sits on the couch and eats his treats, he's pretty good. But to somebody who uses dogs to work, it's a very important thing to have. You need a dog that it has got that gameness that I talk about. Mm-hmm. It's a very prickly subject, gameness. Not a simple one to talk about. What it boils down to is the beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. Mm-hmm. I know that there are a lot of people out there that will breed Yark Terriers to be pets, and they'll breed dogs that haven't got that high game or high prey drive, and they'll have them to look pretty and sit around in their cars and around their homes, and it's a lovely thing. But that's never going to happen in my yard, Mm-hmm. The dogs need to be able to do those things that they're bred to do. And unfortunately, many of the magnificent breeds that we have fallen into the hands of the show people. There'll be a hue and cry over this for sure. Mm-hmm. Fall into the hands of the show people that don't really care about any of that performance stuff. Mm-hmm. They care about appearance, and that's a shame. Mm-hmm. I don't like to see the breeds go down the avenue that many of the fantastic breeds have gone down. Mm-hmm. We're losing performance dogs, every year. There's somebody who looks for an excuse to stop using dogs for those things that they were bred to do. So, hunting and testing and field trials and all that sort of stuff's under threat on a daily. Look at the papers anyway. There's always somebody trying to stop it from happening. That does come at the expense of breeding good dogs. Right. As I say, the people that bred the Yark Terrier bred it for a specific purpose, and there are a number of people within the canine community that are desperately maintaining that versatile terrier traits, or those versatile terrier traits, and thankfully they're not going to stop. And I think that you'll find that as soon as the practical applications are no longer relevant for these breeds, the breeds will die out and they'll fall into the hands of the people who breed them to look like stuff,
right.
not do much,
Mm-hmm. What would be the difference between a Pattertail and a Jagdterrier as far as workability and in the field?
We haven't got enough time to discuss that today. But one thing I will say is, look, Pattertail Terriers are probably, as far as sticking a dog down a hole with a critter and getting him to grab that critter and kill it and drag it out, a Pattertail Terrier is pretty hard to beat.
Mm-hmm.
Where a Jagdterrier is more of a versatile terrier. They'll do that work as well, but you can also use the same dog for other things, which is like for blood tracking work, for retrieval work,
mm-hmm.
for that more versatile applications. Where Pattertails they're digging dogs. You go over to the UK, and that what they call it the Lakeland district.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see Pattertail Terriers. If you can get somebody to take you out and show you what they can do, you know exactly what they're expert at. So they're a very job specific dog, as opposed to a Jagdterrier, which is more of an all round type of terrier.
Mm-hmm.
The good thing with Jagdterriers on wild boar is, a lot of guys use big dogs here for wild boar to catch them by the ear and hold them,
mm-hmm.
which is fine, but it usually results in a lot of suturing for the dogs and injuries and stuff like that. Where the terriers tend not to bite them and hang on to them, they tend to sort of pull them up and bay them,
mm-hmm.
which they drive that dog insane. They're worse than a nagging wife. They get in there and they bark at them and make them turn around and just bay them up and pull them up. And that's the best way to catch pigs with a terrier. And we've got a lot of friends in Europe that hunt European wild boar, which makes the feral pigs in America and Australia look like powder puffs.
Really?
These European things are the real McCoy.
Okay.
They kill dogs without even batting an eyelid.
Ah.
So you don't want a dog that's going to stand toe to toe with this thing. You need a dog that's going to be able to be quick on its feet and move around these things and keep them busy, so the hunter can get in there and do what he's got to do.
Uh-huh.
Jagdterriers are masters at hunting European wild boar. That's one of the reasons they were bred.
Mm-hmm.
Most of Germany is covered by forest, and all those forests are full of European wild boar. Right. So that's how. Well, I've never seen Jagdterriers used to hunt white-tailed deer, but we use them here on Sambar deer, which are much bigger than white-tail. They're about the size of an elk.
Okay.
And they're introduced into Australia by sporting people back in the 1860s, and for whatever reason, to provide hunting opportunities for hunters. But they've got to the stage now where they're outnumbering a lot of our native wildlife and actually becoming a major problem. We use Jagdterriers very similar to how you would use hounds over there to find and flush these deer out to waiting guns.
Mm-hmm.
So basically you set the hunt up where you got hunters set up in the spots where you reckon the deer is going to cross, and you stick the terriers in there and they make them move in towards where the guns are, and we shoot the deer. That's pretty well how it works. Mm-hmm. The terriers, as opposed to hounds, they're much smaller, and they can they're fantastic at getting through really heavy cover, what you call brambles over there, I suppose, would probably be a good example where you physically, it's very difficult to walk through, and it's very difficult for large dogs to move through. The terriers just get through it like a. Yeah, they are. Look, the conformation-wise, these things are put together very well. I've got dogs or frozen semen that I've used from dogs that have been that have come from Texas and New Mexico.
Right.
And, the temperatures there are not that dissimilar to the temperatures we have here. It's a matter of conditioning the dog to the relevant temperatures, and they can operate quite well. It's no different to conditioning hunters to the temperatures as well.
Right.
If you're going to go hunting in Alaska, you get up there and you acclimatise yourself, and you'll be able to hunt okay. Mm-hmm. If you're going to go from Florida to Alaska, expect things to be cool. It's not going to work that way, is it?
No.
Same applies to dogs.
Right. Could you talk about the different coats that the Jagdterrier has?
Well, they go from what you would refer to as a smooth coat, which is it's a fairly heavy, harsh sort of coat, mm-hmm. and then they go through to broken coated, which is like an in between sort of coat. Mm-hmm. So they're good at busting through heavy cover and brambles and thorns and things. It protects the dog. And then you get through dogs that have got slightly longer hair, which is a really bushy, rough sort of coat. Look, if you go to my website, or if you go to our Facebook page, Sambarman Kennels Facebook page, you'll see examples of all the different the coat lengths. Look, the length of the coat really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Mm-hmm. I don't. We get sub-freezing temperatures in some of the places we hunt here in the winter, and we get 100-degree plus days in the summer. So, not that we hunt the dogs much in the summer, because we have some fairly deadly snakes around, and terriers have got a bad habit of trying to kill snakes when they find them. Mm-hmm. And the usual outcome is a dead snake, followed 10 minutes later by a dead dog. So we try to avoid that where we can.
So there is no real purpose, you don't have a preference as far as the coat, as far as protection while they hunt or anything. It just matters the function of the dog.
It's the function stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
A good hunting dog's a good hunting dog. Whether he's got a short coat or whether he's got a broken coat or a rough coat, it doesn't make much difference.
Okay. All right. And these are questions that I ask people because it interests me because I've never lived the life. So, and I know it's a question that's asked a lot of people. What does your kennel setup look like, and what's the purpose of that setup?
Well, I like to keep my dog. See, one thing with terriers is they're not particular unsupervised. You can't just leave them around the backyard thinking everything's going to be honky-dory.
Right.
These dogs got a very, very high prey drive. If you put them somewhere where they can get out, they will. And it's usually accompanied by heartache if they do. Mm-hmm. So the good thing about it is they'll get out and they'll kill all the pussycats in the neighbourhood and bring them to the back door. You need to contain the dogs properly and manage them properly. So if you're used to having an English bulldog and you go and get yourself a Jagdterrier, you're going to find you're going to have to get better fencing.
Right.
But if they can't get over it, they'll get under it or they go through it. So you just need to be aware of it.
Right.
We live on a farm where we've got big dog runs and they don't really need to chew a hole through a fence or dig under it to get out. Mm-hmm. But they do sometimes, you get an individual that wants to go and do his thing and dig a hole and go for a bit of a tour around the district. but in most cases they're pretty mellow. If you give them a good bit of exercise and feed them properly and socialise them properly, you find that you don't get many of those issues. But you need to understand, if you've got a dog that's got a high hunt drive, you can't switch it off like you do a motor car or a computer. You know, the dog needs to it needs to be managed properly.
Right.
So unless you seriously want a dog, a performance dog, you got to make sure you get all your act together before you get one.
Right. Absolutely. And can you talk about this again? This is another question I ask everybody. Can you talk about the specific diet that you feed your dogs, and what's the purpose behind that?
Well, there's nothing really special about what I feed my dogs. I'm a big believer in a raw sort of diet, you know. There's a lot of guys that'll tell you, oh, you got to feed your dog all this really good dry food and it's going to be fantastic. And then 6 years later, all their teeth fall out because they've never chewed a bone in their life. Is an issue. So I think a good balanced diet, which includes good old-fashioned raw meat. After all, dogs are carnivores. We need to remember that. I feed my dogs, you know, everything from wild venison that we shoot, right through to kangaroo meat, to good quality dry food, to chicken. So you've got to simulate what's out there, you know, in the field for dogs. You know, if you look at what a wild dog eats when it's out there, there's no different to what you should be feeding your pet.
Right.
Don't overfeed them. You need to feed them in a way that's commensurate with the amount of energy that they expend and what it takes them to keep themselves warm. So if you overfeed the dog, you're not doing it any favours. And if you underfeed it, you're not doing any favours. But I'm a big believer in good raw feed for dogs. They're meat eaters.
And do you feed them?
It upsets all these people that tell you, you know, oh yeah, we got a complete dog food in a packet. We can feed this dog. It just makes human life easier. It doesn't really help your dog a whole lot.
No, I understand that. And can you talk about how many times a day do you feed your dogs? Is it once or twice?
No, my dogs only get fed once a day.
And
only once a day.
And what's your philosophy behind that?
Well, in real terms, if you've got for instance, we'll use, say, a wolf or a coyote, he eats when he can, and he's got to be able to find food. Sometimes that doesn't happen every day. You know? Right. Sometimes we're lucky to eat once every 2 or 3 days. If I keep pumping food into that dog that's sitting around doing nothing, what do I get? I get a fat, unhealthy dog. What I need is a fit, strong dog that's got a good, balanced diet, and he gets enough to keep him in very, very good, fit, strong condition. If I give him too much, that's not going to happen. So you need to think about what you feed your dog, when you feed it, and how you feed the dogs. There's no 2 dogs that are the same. So even though they could be litter brothers or litter sisters, they've all got different needs and requirements. And you as the owner or the person that's handling the dogs needs to be able to work out the best balance to feed that dog and when to feed it and how to feed it. I didn't really answer a question there, but it's a question that really hasn't got a single answer that would cover all bases, you know. You got to feed your dog to keep it healthy and fit.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, you're not going to get the results you're looking for. Doesn't matter what you're doing with a dog.
Right. Yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing for a start. If you have to do things to keep the prey drive alive in a dog, you've got the wrong dog.
Okay.
That's pretty well how it works. If you need to fire that dog up to bring drive out in it, as far as I'm concerned, that should all be part of the deal. It should be part of the package. That dog hasn't got any drive, has got no interest in hunting, or no interest in closing with other animals. You probably got the wrong dog. It's not particularly well bred. You know, it's hard enough to train a good dog to get the best results without worrying about a badly bred dog or a dog, or getting good results from a dog that's not particularly well bred. And yeah, this subject's creates a lot of argument within the hunting community. But there's a lot of analogies that are used. But one thing is, with any puppy that you get, you need to give it an opportunity to be just that, be a puppy, be a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Let it play and socialise it and expose it to as much positive stuff as you can. You don't need to take that dog out and get him fired up on game straight away. He just needs to be a puppy. Mm-hmm. You take him for walks, you introduce him to the environment, you protect him. That's all you need to do with that pup. Once he gets old enough and all those genetic things start to click in, you'll see what you got then.
Mm-hmm. What is your morning and evening routine with your dogs? What are some of the things that you do is to get them prepared and to keep them fit?
Oh, the working dogs are kept pretty fit just by getting out there doing their job.
Mm-hmm.
The others, it all depends on. It's like any athlete. They've all got different regimes. Mm-hmm. Give them an opportunity to go for a run in a large area. Take them for a swim. Just playing catch or chasing a ball mm-hmm. is enough oftentimes just to keep a dog, fit and mentally and physically. You don't need to over-exercise a dog, but you need to give it an opportunity to blow the cobwebs out and go for a bit of a run. Mm-hmm. If you look at what dogs do in the wild, 90% of the time spent sitting around doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
They'll walk and run in order to go and get food and find mates and do stuff like that. But in most cases, where they get the opportunity, they just do the dog thing, lay around.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but you do need to you got to give them an opportunity to at least do something physical every day. It's the same as us. We need to do something physical every day to keep in trim.
Yep.
But I say if you don't use it, you lose it.
Right.
Same applies to dogs.
Yeah. Besides the Jagdterrier and the coonhounds that you do have, what dog breed that you have never owned interests you right now that you think would be something that you might want to test out and see firsthand?
Look, I'm a dog lover by nature. I love all sorts of dogs.
Uh-huh.
I love all the versatile breeds. All the German short hairs and the wire hairs and the Munsterlanders and the Bracco Italianos and as a kid I used to have whippets and greyhounds and running dogs and for catching rabbits with. I'm a fan of all dogs, pretty well. I'm getting too old now to start, bringing in different breeds and doing things. It takes too long to get it right.
Right.
And I don't know whether I've got everything that I'm doing right just at the moment. I'm still working on it, and sometimes it'll take you a lifetime to get it right. Maybe you never will. So, as I say, I don't care if a dog's a crossbred mongrel rescue dog out of a pound. If he's a good dog to you, he's a good dog. And that's pretty well how it works. I love all dogs.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you have any last words or anything that you'd like to convey?
Well, I don't think I'm going to the gallows, so I won't give him my last words. But what I will say is that it's good to see that there's some podcasts going on for dogs, and it's good for people to listen to as many different dog owners and breeders and handlers as they can to get a true picture of what's going on out there. I don't for 1 minute profess to be the expert on Jagdterriers or for any other breed for that matter. Mm-hmm. So those dogs fit the bill for the sort of thing that I do. Mm-hmm. And as far as I'm concerned, they're going to be pretty hard to beat for the stuff that we do with them. They're great little dogs. But as we said earlier, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. They're not for everyone.
Right.